Good afternoon, and welcome to the Recreation Education Committee. The March 22nd, 2011 meeting will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Gamble? Here. Mr. Gamina? Here. Ms. Cayley? Here. Mr. Tucciarello? Here. Mrs. Valerio?
Here. Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There is not.
Wonderful. Well, at this time, before we begin, is Mark Quinn here? Okay, Mark. Today's going to present us with the flower of the month, and I want to bring one home. Yeah.
Well, spring's here, and one of my favorite signs of spring is forsythia. Bright yellow flowers up front here. You won't see those flowering in your yard yet. We've actually forced these along a little bit. They're a particularly easy plant to force. We bring them inside probably about a week and a half in advance, and they jump right out. Which, interestingly, you can do that at home. If you go out in your yard in the late winter and cut a piece of forsythia and bring it in and put it in a glass, it'll bloom very nicely for you. I do it in my office all the time. It's kind of neat. It's one of the easier plants to force along. One thing I'll tell you about forsythia, she asked if I've got any bush left. They're absolute weeds. They really grow very aggressively. So what you want to do is put it somewhere it's got room to grow. There's actually a lot of different varieties, and some are smaller. These are actually intermediate, and these won't get huge. But some of the ones we have in the park will get like 12 feet tall by 12 feet wide. Suspensa, it's kind of a weeping form. It's much bigger. They're very attractive. The wildlife love them. They're good for nesting areas, and they're an early sign of spring. We'll be seeing these blooming probably in about 3 weeks now. And like I say, spring's here. It's great. The other thing I'm going to tell you about the plant itself is it's a really good idea to know how to prune these things. What you see people do is prune them into little balls and hedges. That's not what you want to do with these. They look particularly poorly, and to get the maximum bloom, they take a really heavy pruning. You can prune them right down to the ground or down to knee level, whatever you want, but then let them grow out completely. If you keep them in a little ball or a little head shape, they really don't bloom very well, and they don't look great. But you do see that occasionally, and like I say, the best time to prune most flowering plants, including forsythia, is right after they bloom. So it's an early, they'll bloom in April. You prune them within, say a month after that, and you'll get a great bloom the next year. So it's really a nice plant. It's a great sign of spring, and it's always cheery to have them. Questions on forsythia or anything else?
What is the other plant?
Oh, the other plant was last month's plant of the month,
right.
and those are Safflera. That's a tropical, so we're going from the tropical. Actually, we got 3 months worth up here. We got the cyclamen for 2 months ago, the Safflera, and then the forsythia, just to provide some color. And they still look nice, so we figured we'd leave them.
They're lovely. Thank you very much. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Okay. I didn't ask, but is there anyone present who's not signed up to speak, would like to address the committee at this time? Okay, there being none, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the January 25th, 2011 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business.
Referral 11-53, amend.
Moved by Mr. Gamina, seconded by Mr. Tucciarello. Is there any discussion? Mr. Gamina.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Director Staub. Why is this so important to do right now? What is the urgency of this particular project?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's an excellent question. The urgency to do this at this time is that this area of the zoo is presently closed and under construction due to the work being done for the new lion exhibit. Currently, the extent of the public area of the zoo goes to the far end of Rocky Coast. And right now, the baboon exhibit and the elephant exhibit are not open to the public because the lion exhibit is under construction. There's heavy equipment there. That will be the case through the end of the year. So this is actually the most opportune time to complete this construction. It was the plan from the start to do both of these projects concurrently so that we did not have to disrupt this area of the zoo on more than one occasion. It's going to be challenging this year, having a third of the zoo not available to the public, but we believe through some incentives that we have, some new animals coming in, some different promotions, that we'll be able to keep attendance at a very high level that we've enjoyed over the last few years. If we had to do that more than 1 year, I think, especially when you have a brand new exhibit and then right next door to it, say you were under construction again in 2 or 3 years, I think that you would have a difficulty with your visitors.
Thank you. One other question through you, Madam Chair. This particular project and the additional $800,000. Actually, I guess I have more than one question. So, the additional $800,000. What exactly will it be used to construct?
Yep. As you know, the original allocation for this project was $1 million. And where did that number come from? That number was developed internally by the Parks Department and the zoo back in 2008 for inclusion in the 2010-2015 capital improvement project or program, because we start to plan for these inclusions 2 years in advance. At the time, that original estimate accounted for the majority of improvements being inside the barn, with addition of new stalls, a major conversion of the holding area's floors to sand rather than the current hard surface, which is reflective of new animal care practices. It involved construction of new passages from the exterior to the interior, and it also accounted for a additional small yard right next to what would be considered the back of the building as a management yard. And all those improvements were within the current footprint. Now that we've had the benefit of having assistance from our engineering consultant, our zoo design consultant, WDM, out of Wichita, Kansas, we've realized an increased scope of work based on regulatory and animal management requirements that were not contemplated in that original estimate. That includes 6 major components. The first being a shade structure, a permanent shade structure that will be mounted on the barn to provide adequate shade in the exhibit, which is required by the USDA. And this shade structure actually replaces 3 existing large shade trees which have become severely compromised by the elephants since the exhibit opened back in 2006, to the point that they're now dead. The shade structure is a thatched overhang. I have a rendering here that I can share, which will also actually serve to enhance the architecture of the barn. We've gotten a lot of comments, not so nice over the years, that it looks like a Target in the middle of the zoo, that it's got that big box look. This kind of breaks that up and was designed by the architect to have more of a African look and feel in that exhibit. Another thing that was added, that was $100,000. Another thing, hydraulic controls associated with 7 new gates throughout the exhibit. We had estimated that at one cost, and we actually now, in looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, It's significantly more than what we had estimated. We also have new interior containment fencing so that we can have maximum flexibility inside the barn to be able to shift animals throughout all of the stalls, including the new stalls. We have an exterior bull viewing yard, which would provide full public viewing of a bull elephant, which basically segments the existing main yard. And that would be achieved through a combination of fencing and a concrete berm. And even without a bull elephant, this would be bull capable, but even without a bull elephant, say we had a third female elephant, the new yard would be an effective management tool, because with the addition of any new elephant, you're going to have some introduction issues, and you probably aren't going to be able to have them all together at the same time as we do now with our two, who have grown up since they were very young. We also have new steel fencing, which surrounds the yard, and that would allow full utilization of all the yards by all the elephants, no matter what their sex are, and that adheres to increased reinforcement standards that are national standards. And we've also reinforced that small management yard that I talked about. And all of these improvements, additional improvements, continue to be contained within that current exhibit footprint. And I can show you on this artist rendering what I'm talking about.
How deep is the umbrella? Yeah.
I'm sorry. How far over does that shade structure hang?
I got a better question. How many elephants can get under?
How many elephants can get under? Well, as with any shade structure, it can cast a shadow further than that, but you could get 2 elephants under it. That's the design, to be able to have 2 elephants. And then that management yard that I talked about, you can see if you look kind of over here, it goes along the back of the building. Right here, you have that segmented additional yard, which we've broken up through our architect. We've broken up with a combination of fence and then this concrete berm. So it's not just animals in a fence, animal. You have fence, and then you have more of a natural look. And then you have the fencing that you see throughout the
Excuse me, can I ask another question? In the orientation of this, where is the old railroad bed? Behind it. Okay. Thank you.
So, the part that we got here.
Mr. Gabina, do you have any more?
Yes.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, our, I think it's called AZA accreditation, we are up for review for that soon, I think. Correct, Director Stubb?
Through you, Madam Chair, we are up for accreditation in 2013.
And through you, Madam Chair, are these improvements within this exhibit, are they vital for the AZA accreditation? I mean, do we risk losing our accreditation if we do not, I guess, improve our elephant exhibit to accept a bull?
Through you, Madam Chair, the answer to that question is yes. We would risk our Association of Zoos and Aquarium accreditation without having the capacity to accommodate a minimum of 3 elephants, one of which could be a bull.
Okay.
And that's how the standards are, that, you know, you have to have a social grouping of at least 3 elephants, which is based on the smallest social grouping of elephants observed in the wild. And you have to be able to also accommodate a bull, because, you know, from AZA's perspective, they don't know what they're going to send you until they're ready to, so they want to have their zoos ready to accommodate whatever comes their way.
And my last question, through you, Madam Chair, I think the number of zoos in the United States that have AZA accreditation is approximately 10%. So why is it so important? I mean, there are 90% of the zoos out there that don't have accreditation, so why is it so important that we have our accreditation, or that we continue with that?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, that's an excellent question. There's approximately 2,400 animal exhibitors that are licensed by the United States Department of Agriculture throughout the country. And of those 2,400, 223 are accredited by the AZA. The difference between being an accredited member of the AZA and all the others is basically the difference between being a recognized zoo and a roadside attraction.
Any further questions? Ms. Cayley?
You know, I'll just hang on to it. Thank you. Through the chair, is it, when we were talking about doing the estimates, if I heard correctly, we were talking 2008 when the plan was put into the budget, the capital improvement. Is it customary then to take a look at cost changes on a yearly basis to adjust that? Because I would have thought if we did the estimates in 2008, we're now at 2010.
Yep.
So was that done?
Great question through you, Madam Chair. 2008 is when we started putting together numbers for inclusion in the 2010, 2015 capital improvement program. So you would have gotten it for approval in 2009. So we were planning a year out. And then the money available, 100,000 of that million for design, engineering services, architectural services, was available to us in 2010. So that's when we had access to professionals to help us with this, and that's where we came up with these numbers. So it was last year when we started to develop these numbers.
Thank you. But we approved them sort of, I believe, based on the same route that you were going in 2000 through the chair at the end of 2010 for this budget at a $900,000 approval.
We approved them in 2009 for this program. So prior to us having the benefit of the engineering.
Right. And then, has any of that debt been authorized?
Through you, the $1 million has been authorized,
Just $1 million.
yes.
Okay. Can you tell me, through the chair, when the new, am I understanding that there are new standards since 2008 or 2009, and if there are new standards that have come out within the last year, when they came out?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, there are not new standards that have come into place since 2008, 2009. There's new standards that have come in place since our current exhibit was built.
Thank you. I guess I may be incorrect in the timeline, but I'm a little bit confused that we didn't know a little bit sooner than this that the cost overrun, or the cost, the extension of the cost is almost 100%, and we don't really have figures. I would really like to have a better breakdown of what's happening in order to make a better decision on this. But that said, I did have one. I did hear that we're sticking completely to the 1991 footprint.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes.
Thank you.
And we're sticking to the footprint of the current exhibit.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, back to the actual front copy where it says additional elephants. It's been my understanding that there was be an additional elephant. How would you explain the plural here?
Through you, Madam Chair, we could have a berth. You could have 3 elephants and have a berth, which would bring you up to 4.
Okay, thank you.
And that's hopefully where we're going.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think that's all that I have at this point in questions. No, I don't. I have another question. I guess I would prior to, I don't feel comfortable in approving this at this point. I do want this project done, but I would hope that I would have a little bit more detail before I voted on it in the full legislature. So at this time, I guess what I'm asking for is a little bit more breakdown of the difference between what you originally thought was going to be the cost and what is happening now. And if you anticipate that if this does take longer than a year, what that estimate might be, because we're dealing with another year forward where costs could change. So I guess what I'm asking for at this point through the chair is that a better understanding of what the costs are prior to the next, when we vote on this.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to provide that for you. I'd be happy to sit with you and go over it with you if you'd like. I didn't quite understand your second point.
I'm not sure it was a good point, so I'll just let that one go. Thank you, through the chair.
Mr. Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, I just have a few questions. You mentioned the fencing. How high is the fencing regulation for the fencing for the exhibit?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's 8 feet.
8 feet. Is there a special type of, through the chair, is there a special type of material that we use for the fencing that's driving up these costs or that's been projected in the cost, or is it standard fencing?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, the material for the new fence is steel. And the additional cost is driven mostly by replacing the fence, which we didn't anticipate at the time of the original estimate. So it's not that the material has gone up, it's that, we're replacing the entire fence.
Okay. Also, through the chair, you mentioned the hydraulic gates. We had 7. Could you give me a brief description? Are they included in the facility itself, the building itself, and around the surrounding areas?
You're absolutely correct, through you, Mrs. Chairman. Madam Chairman, the hydraulic gates are found both indoors and outdoors. The gates, obviously, to withstand the impact of an elephant, are very heavy, very strong, and require hydraulic mechanism to be able to open and close.
Okay. And the last question I have for you through the chair. The AZA, when they came up with the standards, we had anticipated that we're probably going to have 4 elephants in there. That's our plan. We probably want to see them breed and make a 4th elephant. That's what you're saying?
Through you, Madam Chair, what our current plan is?
Yeah.
Currently, we have 2 elephants.
Right.
Our plan would be to acquire a 3rd elephant after we make these improvements. And if that elephant is a breeding age female, to breed that female, most likely through artificial insemination, and have a fourth elephant. And statistically, in captive births, the breakdown is 50% female, 50% male births. So our likelihood would be 50-50 that we would have a male elephant, which drives, also why AZA insists that you're able to house a bull elephant.
Okay, and one other question. On there, you said that they were putting that new structure on there to provide shade. Are we foregoing the conclusion that we're going to plant some trees in there and hopefully they'll grow in that diagram, or?
Through you, Madam Chair, we will not be planting trees within there because the elephants would destroy whatever we planted. And when this exhibit was built back in 2005, those were existing trees that were left in with the understanding that eventually they would become compromised by the elephants, die, and a artificial structure would need to be placed within the exhibit. And, the time's come for that, and that's what that shade structure is.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gamble.
I just have a question. Knowing that the fact that in construction, pricing of materials, et cetera, skyrocketing, I can see that the urgency. Also, at this time, isn't there a benefit as well as in terms of financial benefits of bonding now because of the rates being so low?
To you, Madam Chair, that is correct. At this present time, interest rates are low for permanent financing of government debt. We would anticipate borrowing when the need arose based on the expenditures of the exhibit. So while those rates could change at any point in time, we wouldn't expect them to rise too high in the next year.
And what kind of percent are you looking at?
To you, Madam Chair, we are probably looking in the 3.5 to 4.5, potentially as high as 5%.
I see. Okay. Any further questions? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item carries. Next item.
Referral 11-54.
Moved by Mr. Tutorello, seconded by Mr. Gomina. Any questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
My official question page. Yes, if I may, through the chair. Does the additional funding to be brought in, does that mean that the $161,000 is actually a bit more than was expected? Serendipitously? I don't know.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it's actually the $12,302 more than we anticipated.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 11-55.
Moved by Mr. Gomina, seconded by Mr. Tucciarello. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs.
Oh,
Kaylee.
I'm
I'm sorry, did someone here? Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, just a couple questions briefly. And through the chair, would this be the same situation, anticipating one funding amount and getting a little bit more?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. This is for cataloging the system. Is the whole, will this be cataloging through the chair, the whole Arboreta? Lost the word? Categorizing the entire.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's for both the Highland and Durand Eastman Park Arboreta. So yes, the entire collection.
And thank you. Through the chair, will this be public data?
Through you, Madam Chair, the data is actually available to the public now upon request, and our goal is to eventually be able to web enable it.
All right, thank you, that's good.
Any further questions? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral 11-56.
Item, moved by Mr. Tucciarello, seconded by Mr. Gamina. Any discussion? Mr. Gamina.
Through you, Madam Chair, how much revenue do we anticipate coming back to the county from these events? And then if there is any, where does it go?
Through you, Madam Chair, from the Rotary Foundation Barbecue Music Festival at Northampton, we're anticipating $5,000. From the Rochester Brew Fest, we're anticipating $10,000. Those sums would be deposited into the trust funds for each of those parks.
One more question through you, Madam Chair. What are some examples of other projects that have been funded through monies in the trust fund?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can give you an example of in Highland Park, the new ADA accessible playground that we're putting in Highland Park was funded by the trust fund as well as CDBG grant.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gamble had one, but
I just have one question. Why was this event postponed? The Brewfest.
Through you, Madam Chair, last year around this time there was some complications, not just with this event, but with events of this type and the Liquor Control Board. It was kind of new territory for them, and they were working out their policies at the time. They've since come up with regulations for these types of events, and so it was postponed last year, and we have confidence that it will be able to take place this year.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Cayley.
Just a couple little ones, and to just go a little bit further in that through the chair, since we authorized the ability to enter into a contract, was it actually the county that canceled the event due to difficulties with the liquor board?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, the responsibility of obtaining the license is the vendor. We have to sign off on it once they complete the paperwork, but it didn't even get to that stage. So it was canceled by the vendor.
Thank you. And so then there weren't any penalties for not following through, in other words, the vendor?
Through you, Madam Chair, no.
Right, thank you. And
It was actually the responsible thing to do at the time.
right. Do you have, through the chair, do you have $10,000 would be a nice tidy sum to get back, and it would be nice to put that into the trust fund, but do we have an idea, or is there a capacity limit to any function that is happening in the parks, especially when it's got such a robust name as the Brewfest?
Through you, Madam Chair, this event will be limited tickets, both VIP and general admission, and we're working that out with the vendor now, but based on the capacity of the fenced-in area, which will be just a portion of the park will still be open to the public. It will be basically in the gazebo area and two of the shelters. but based on capacity, it would have a cutoff.
Thank you. Do we have an idea? Only because I have been to functions, I have helped organize functions. I guess I'm looking at more specifically if you have even a ballpark of what the limitation would be through the chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, like I said, we are working that out with the vendor, and until we arrived at that, I'd really not want to guess at a number. The number would obviously be something that we're comfortable with the fence capacity, and would meet our comfort level and any applicable regulatory agencies.
Thank you.
Any further questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, one opposed. All right, item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the committee? Okay, there being no further business, the March 22nd, 2011 meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee is scheduled for Tuesday, April 26th, 2011 at 5 p.m.